When I got this script initially, I was expecting giant battle, lightsaber fights, something horrible to happen. And what I got was these two droids sent out to the marketplace to get a fruitcake.
Okay, 3PO, look. I'm sending you on a mission.
A mission? Oh, my!
The cake was designed, it was approved. It was a very simple sort of round layer cake. It had a nice blue icing on it. It worked fine. I mean, it looked like a cake.
I just see this prop of this cake and I'm like, guys, that's not good enough.
For a while in production, that cake and that Yogan fruit jar and the Yogan fruit were what this episode was all about.
It is true, I did make the production stop. I did make them remodel that cake. And I did demand a higher quality cake for Padme's banquet. Maybe that seems nuts to the viewers too, but what it should tell you is that there is no detail too small that we will not try to make it better.
At the end of the day, we're swapping something that looked like a cake for something else that looks like a cake.
3PO, is there a problem?
I'm sorry, my lady, but it appears the dessert is missing its Jogan fruit. Come along, Artu.
Going back into Coruscant this time around and doing this street market, I thought I want all stalls to have kind of steam coming out. There's just steam everywhere. There's steam coming from buildings for no reason. There's light leaking in from the cracks in the buildings to light up little pools of sunlight as R2 and 3PO are walking through that area. They're all lit. Even though it's during the day, these stalls may be in shadow, and I want them to be lit by like a bare light bulb.
Do you by any chance have Jogan fruit?
There's everyday life that needs to happen on Coruscant, and we've never really seen that. So it was exciting to visualize that, to bring that to life, to have an opportunity to expand that world a little bit more.
How much you got, my friend?
Artu, make sure you watch our credits.
What you got was a much more street vendor, ruffian kind of area in the upper levels of Coruscant Underworld, where I think the streets felt dirtier. It kind of felt like an outdoor farmer's market.
So then immediately I knew that that's our grit. Okay, I can build on that, but now we need this contrast of the droid spa.
Hello, and welcome to Droid Spa. Please, come inside.
It was very sort of consciously that the front end is like sort of upscale hotel where there's this reception desk. It had to have that sort of air of a relaxing, pleasant place to be. This isn't purely just a workshop. It's got some sense of decor and sort of style, if you like.
And so I came up with a list of funny things that could happen to the droids. So here we have the conveyor belt, and then they get the pre-cleaning, and then they get dropped into the oil. And then we move the droids back up, they get the oil sucked off of them, and they go into the buffing area.
It's pretty sweet. It's a fun place. And that was really the idea, was that this was, if you were a droid, this would be pretty much your favorite place to go ever.
It doesn't get more soothing than that, does it?
I wanted to intercut the droid spa scene with 3PO being tortured, because I thought it was funny how R2 was having this great experience and being pampered, and 3PO is just the opposite.
Why are you putting that there?
To find out what's inside.
Also in that sequence with 3PO being tortured is we have this droid, 8D8 he was called in Return of the Jedi. He's the droid that kind of works the torture devices down when 3PO and R2 are in the bowels of Jabba's palace, and we put that droid in this scene torturing 3PO, and Corey Burton played the voice, and I told him to play it as kind of a robotic, dispassionate Hank Hill.
According to the analyzer, he is not lying. His head's totally empty of any information useful to us.
And this was one of the first episodes where I wanted to stray away from how we were doing electricity before. for shocking. I really wanted to start to get a little bit more stylized with it. The effects team came up with a really good way to use a toon shader to just get this kind of wiggly, staticky line around the characters and make it look painful. I thought it'd be really great that after you shock him, you see a little bit of smoke coming out from his little neck area, which worked really well.
Just as we had to make the scenes with R2 incredibly fun and light, the scenes with 3PO had to be really, really dark and horrible, and they had to make me uncomfortable, and they did.
This is a nightmare!
Gentlemen, I see no need for resentment in light of this joyous occasion of my freedom.
In this episode, we have this Hutt crime syndicate family that we've never really seen, we've sort of hinted at before, and we get to see them for the first time and give a face to a darker side of Star Wars, this Underworld.
The idea that there's an underworld, that there are crime lords controlling vast amounts of wealth and power in the Star Wars galaxy is nothing new. You know, this idea really originates with Jabba, the idea that Han is working for someone in A New Hope. It gets expanded upon to see that he even has a palace in Return of the Jedi, and that he really is like a mafia boss. You know, he's a godfather. Another one of the things that I wanted in this world was I wanted to show the audience that Hutts can look different.
It was a challenge to sort of come up with Hutts that still looked like Hutts but didn't just look like Jabba. It was important that Jabba still stand out and be very distinct from everyone else. So this was an opportunity to just come up with Hutts that were still credibly Hutts, and they were the same species, but they had slightly different sort of facial features and slightly different builds. Their heads are quite different in terms of the shapes that they are. Gardula appears in Phantom Menace. So Gardula is actually visible behind Jabba during the pod race sequence. We sort of took kind of the same approach that it looks like ILM took for Gardula in the first place, which was if you just take Jabba, slice his head in half, and then paste the other half to itself, it will look like a Hutt, but it won't look like Jabba because Jabba's face does sort of slide to one side. Something that Wayne had come up with for the other Hutts that came in really handy was the toops. The toops are those sort of small, dark blue, starfish-like creatures that are sort of just living on the top of some of the Hutts' heads. Because the toops had worked so well on the other Hutts, we decided to sort of give Mama the Hutt this sort of big, bizarre top knot, which is, if you look closely, made up of nothing but a pile of toops.
Mama!
Should have figured after all these years of never calling, you'd show up at dinner time.
We applied the same process to her voice. Believe it or not, it's a woman that actually performs this. It doesn't sound like it after the process. The same process that we applied to Jabba's voice, but we kind of cranked it up a few notches.
Should have figured after all these years of never calling,
you'd show up at dinner time.
She's got this giant booming voice, and it sounds kind of threatening, but it also sounds, it's also kind of funny. At least it's funny to me anyway. This is probably one of my favorite characters in season 3 is Mama the Hutt.
You won't sit in your stank.
You gonna pass the slime pods.
When Hunt for Ziro was first presented to me, the first challenge that I saw was the environment.
George had some very specific ideas about Nal Hutta. He gave us some really rough sketches that it was to be this very swampy, these big pustule orbs kind of sticking up where they would build their palaces.
When we went into the design of Nal Hutta, we wanted to basically build modules that repeat themselves on the ground. So that enabled us to build a network. And here you're just looking at a small section of Nal Hutta. So you can quickly see that no matter where we are down here, it doesn't matter, you're not seeing the repeating patterns. And when you drop in a map painting in the background that looks a lot like all of this, it just continues on forever. And all of this is just the same pieces, same 3 or 4 pieces of geometry repeated over and over again. This was also the first episode where I started to open the throttle a little bit on lighting and get it a little bit more dramatic. Like something that would be a little bit over the top. And I thought, well, you know what? I want a disco ball in that room. I want to see lights constantly going around that room the entire time on the huts. That, I feel, completely changed the mood of that room.
When we got to the introduction of Cy Snoodles, was in the script, she was singing this song, and we queued up Temple of Doom. I said, this is what Cy Snoodles has to be doing. I want women and the feathers, choreography moving, and they do this ridiculous number, and then up pops Cy Snoodles.
It's an odd couple between Cy Snoodles and Ziro the Hutt, because Ziro the Hutt is this huge slug, and Cy Snoodles is this little like dumpling with chopstick legs,
Cy is one of those characters that first appeared as purely a puppet for the original release of Return of the Jedi, and then she got a sort of CG makeover for the re-releases in the 90s. Cy has extremely skinny limbs, very, very thin, and layers of strips of sort of leather cloth hanging off her belt, and she's a lot of sort of small, fine detail. She's pretty much a 20s flapper in the body of some sort of frog, giraffe thing.
She got this long, protruding lips from her head, which, it looks really funny, so let's play with that a little bit.
I thought you were coming back for me. I waited so long. I thought you didn't love me anymore.
Hey, Commander, looking good? Kenobi, you look worse for wear. How's temple life?
It was always among the things the fans would ask me is, Dave, when are we going to see Quinlan Vos? For people not in the know, Quinlan Vos was a rather large figure when it came to the comic books of Star Wars and the EU. George likes the character too. He wanted to bring it to the Clone Wars and thought, well, this would be a good episode, hunting the Hutts. It makes sense to bring Quinlan into it. He's always working with the Underworld in the comic books. So we had decisions about the voice, and of course we wanted to keep him a gruff, kind of tough guy, older feeling than Anakin, but kind of with less mannerisms.
Because he's been around for so long, there's different interpretations and even different iterations of the character. The first time he appeared, he was wearing a fairly traditional Jedi outfit, very similar to Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan's. And then he went through a sort of dark, angsty, tortured period where he's wearing lots of black leather and eyeliner and stuff. And that seemed a little too far in the other direction. So we sort of looked at the different options there were for a look for Quinlan Vos and tried to settle on one that was pretty iconic and still was credibly a Jedi outfit but didn't look like Obi-Wan's at all. It was a very different palette. There was a lot more sort of tooled leather and decals and stuff.
To make an action scene exciting, it has to forward the story, of course. It can't be just random, like violence. What inspired me to do some of the action is I truly believe Star Wars gives you the opportunity to have super heroic action and kung fu action. I think they embody the two genres for me. I always trying to pose the characters to their unique talents. Like for Jedis, they're super athletic. You gotta think of them as like martial artists. So I inject those way of thinking of a martial artist into the action of our characters in the Clone Wars.
I never did enjoy hanging out with you.
when we went to do these 2 episodes, Evil Plans and Hunt for Ziro, I told Brian and Stu, I said, these are going to be some of the weirdest things we ever do. I mean, you'll see what I mean when we get into it. But this is, we were doing a spa for droids. We're doing Cy Snoodles, romancing Ziro the Hutt. I mean, weird stuff.
Not the kind of thing that a weekly action TV series is going to give you very often. So, you know, it was different.